Hi, welcome to week 24, book 24, V by Thomas Pynchon. Now, this is take three, actually. Take one, uh, eh, the microphone picked up more of some young women having a conversation than it did of me, which is, kind of, you know, I've got no way to know how this microphone sounds, how the audio sounds to you. I only know what I hear in my ear, which is not quite the same. And then, the second take was just me doing a sound check to see how the sound is with I've moved and the young women have also left. So combination makes it better. I should point out I hold nothing against these young women. I mean, they're in a public space. I'm in a public space. They're having a good time. That's all fine and good. I just wish that, I had known that I was picking up their conversation because I feel like I was eavesdropping on them. But point of fact is, I couldn't hear a single thing. It just now sounds like just them chatting over me, which is obviously not the audio we're looking for here. So, now to Thomas Pynchon B. Some of you may be aware that I have a long-standing relationship with this author, Thomas Pynchon. I've often called him my favorite author, and one of his books, the third of his novels, V, is often the one I've cited as one of my favorite novels. That said, also should be said that I haven't read Tom Pynchon in quite some time. Um, this novel was originally published in 1963. I imagine that I encountered it probably, well, I first encountered Pynchon in 1988 when McCrane Lot 49, his second novel, was assigned for a class I was in. And I was fascinated with it enough that I wanted to read his big book, Gravity's Rainbow. And at that time, I made it halfway through Gravity's Rainbow. And in that time period, I also did acquire, I believe, a copy of B. But whether or not I read it at that time, I couldn't say. I just know that one of the copies I had of V was of that era. Um, anyway, so life went on, lots of other things happened, and um, now we're here in 2025. And Pynchon is publishing another novel later this year in September, so I am rereading his bibliography in anticipation of that. Should be interesting. Um, okay, so a little square on the screen here. I don't really want. I don't know why it's there. Can I get rid of it? I apparently can't get rid of it. I don't know if you can see it or not. Put up there in the corner. Okay. So, V. Published in 1963. It is a story that goes in a V, basically. One V is Vinnie Profane, who is a human yo-yo, also known as, in Pynchon's world, a schmeal, also known as someone who is very much on the streets. Now, he's on the streets because he doesn't have any direction in life. He's got no focus, nowhere to be in particular. Uh, he has jobs, but he doesn't have a job. And he does stuff, but he doesn't do anything in particular. He starts off in Norfolk, Virginia, just wandering, goes to a Navy bar that he used to go to when he was in the service, and runs into some of his old shipmates, but also runs into two particular characters, which will play a role in the rest of the novel. One is Pig Bodine, who is a pretty obnoxious, kind of over the top caricature of a soldier or sailor, and the other is Paola. Paola is the estranged wife of one of his old shipmates, Patty Hott, and Paola kind of sort of comes on to Profane, but Profane's not really interested in part because he's kind of messed up in the head over a woman named Rachel Hourglass, and we get some of Rachel Hourglass's background, how she doesn't really put out per se, which is an issue here, that the novel is very much in the minds of these very libidinous men. And, there's a very masculinistic tone to this. Women are referred to as girls. They're oftentimes mostly unclothed or not wearing underwear or not wearing a bra, and so we hear about their nipples or that kind of thing. It's very much in that mind that we're in all the way through. And how much that represents who Pynchon really is versus how much it represents what he's trying to write about is, an open question, because Pynchon does not have a public life. He is a famous recluse who, stays away from the limelight entirely. He wants his reputation as an author, such as it is, to be based almost entirely on the books with no real sense of the author, which is kind of ironic because this book has a semi-autobiographical uh, thing going on. Now, not in the sense that any actual event actually happened to Pynchon, but that he writes about these demobilized soldiers or sailors, and that's exactly what he was at the time when he wrote it. Is he was a demobilized sailor, um, and those experiences obviously shaped a large part of how he sees the world. So Benny Profane runs into this bar called the Sailor's Grave. Uh, runs into Paola, runs into Pig Bodine, and they all make their way variously up to New York, where uh, Paola ends up staying with Rachel, as does Pig Bodine, and Pig is trying to get into Paola's pants or Rachel's pants or anyone's pants for that matter. He's a despicable guy. He's kind of lovably despicable, but still despicable. Later on, he basically tries to force himself on Rachel, I think it is, and Bo- Profane has to physically pull him off of her. That's, these people get wickedly drunk and remember nothing. And that's part of what happens here too, is a kind of decadence of this demobilized group. Uh, they're horribly violent, and where did violence come from? Well, taught to them in war, perhaps, or perhaps it's this masculinist violence that's going on here. Maybe there's something going on here about some toxic masculinity before toxic masculinity was a thing. That's also very much a possibility here. Um, so, the way Pynchon writes, you can't take anything at face value. Uh, Different events that happen may or may not have really happened in the context of the story of the book. This is a postmodern novel, and so it is in places very self-aware of itself as a linguistic construction in which there is no underlying reality. It's just a construction of um, signifiers. Pynchon is very aware of this, and the novel is too, and sometimes even one might suspect the characters are. Um, Maybe not so much in this novel, but in his other novels, I think that definitely becomes more of a possibility. The characters become aware of themselves as fictional constructions, um, or not even constructions, just a bunch of sentences put together. I mean, think about it. If you have a character in a novel, okay, and they are in Norfolk sitting at the bus depot waiting for the bus or waiting for the ferry depot, and later on the ferry, okay, what's really going on there? That character doesn't exist. I've never been, well, I've been to Norfolk actually, but who knows? Maybe Norfolk doesn't exist. Maybe the ferry doesn't exist. Maybe it wasn't snowing as it is in the novel on the date that that happens. None of that matters because it's fiction. It's not um, a snapshot of reality. It is a construction of words. There is no such thing as Benny Profane. Benny Profane is a collection of maybe 1,000 sentences. Pig Bodine is maybe a construction of 300 sentences. Paola Magistral is a construction of maybe another 500 or 600 sentences. And that's it. These people don't exist the way that you feel that you exist, or the way I feel I exist. They don't have enfleshment. They don't have an interiority. And that's actually something that becomes a problem in some Pynchon, is the characters literally don't have an interiority. Now, in this book, we do get some sense of profane thinking. We do get some sense of another character, Herbert Stencil, thinking. But of the women, maybe not so much. The women become places for the men to yo-yo between, or to come to rest with. And that's kind of what the women represent more than anything else, as the ending of the Wanderlust, the end of the yo-yoing, the end of the search becomes. And V is, there is a vaginal kind of connotation to it. There's a sense of, coming home to rest in the womb kind of approach here. Um, Now, perhaps we can read this as the human condition, and just because it's convenient, we have it gendered as, the men doing the wandering and the women doing the homing. You know, um, Perhaps there is some straightforward misogyny going on here, that Pynchon was, I mean, he is a product of his time. There is no doubt about that, as we all are. Um, so, Profane goes up to New York. Pig and uh, Paola go stay with Rachel and the whole sick crew, which is the group of artists that Rachel is connected with. And the whole sick crew is also connected to Herbert Stencil, which is where the Stencil story starts. But Profane winds up not going there. Instead, he yo-yos back and forth on the subway because he's got nothing to do and nowhere to go in particular. And Josephina and Geronimo and Angel run into him. They are Puerto Ricans living in the Nueva York, as they call it. And he gets a job with Geronimo and Angel hunting alligators in the sewers of New York, while uh, Josephina tries to get him to start a relationship with her, but he won't do it, in part because she's young, in part because his mind is messed up about Rachel. Remember, he didn't really want to get with Paola, in part because Paola was Patty Hod's woman, and part because his head's messed up about Rachel. And he doesn't get involved with Josephina for the same reason, perhaps, or perhaps other reasons. I mean, part of it is, he is staying with these people, and how is Angel and Geronimo going to take it if he gets involved with Josephina, who I think is one of their sisters? One of them is her brother. So, in any case, uh, they get really, really well. Two things happen. One is, while he's in the sewers, Stencil, Profane does manage to take care of a couple of alligators, and one of them turns out to be Stencil in an alligator costume. He's down there looking into a weird priest who apparently had a relationship with the rats, and some connection with V and his manuscript, which is supposed to be down there someplace. And Stencil's down there looking for it, apparently. Um, and the other thing that happens is that after a drunk where they're just basically looking to get laid and go after some jailbait, as they call the underage women here, they hear about a riot, and they involving the Playboys, a group of um, characters connected to Josephina, and they go and find that, and turns out that Josephina has been gang raped by the uh, gang, and Profane can't handle this, and he just takes off, while I think it's Angel goes in and beats the crap out of her, which is one of those scenes that's just distasteful that happens in the novel. But again, maybe this is a critique of masculinity. Maybe this is a critique of the toxic approach. I'll leave you to determine what you think of that yourself. But the novel continues. Profane eventually gets connected with the whole sick crew and gets connected back up with Rachel and with Pig and with Charisma and Mafia, who is one of the female characters. Mafia is married to uh, Ronnie Winsome, and she just likes to get laid apparently, and likes to play around wearing just a padded bra, and I don't know. It's a decadent group of artists who basically accomplish nothing, and that's the point. They accomplish nothing in various creative ways, but ultimately their creativity isn't creating art. This is a hothouse. The hothouse is looking to the past, it's looking to tradition, it's looking to where we have been, and this is Stencil's path as well. And this is where Herbert Stencil becomes important. Now, Herbert Stencil is a character who is actively looking for V. Now, what is V? The energetic principle, maybe? Uh, truth? Um, it is something of a great white whale kind of thing. It is something of a Stencil doesn't even know what it is. It is associated with women. It's associated with the inanimate. V is a she for sure. Now, why is he looking for V? Because his father, Herbert's Sidney Stencil, had been something of a spy back in the 1890s, 1880s, 1870s, up until 1919, where he dies in Malta or outside of Malta. Uh, and in his journals, um, Sidney said something about there's more to be than anyone could imagine, or I don't know the exact quote, but it's there's more to be than anyone could imagine, or than I thought, or than can be written here, or something to that effect. So is V victory? What is V? But V is associated with women. So Stencil has been going after any kind of mention of a woman who is V. And it becomes a very amorphous concept, maybe so overdetermined by the way Stencil goes after it that he diffuses it into nothing, diffuses it into meaninglessness. And maybe that's part of the point, is the very search for truth diffuses truth. Maybe that's what's going on there. Meanwhile, Profane is not looking for truth. He's just looking to survive. And okay, so things progress. And what happens in the Stencil sections is Stencil, who always refers to himself in the third person, not as I. He is anti-pronoun before anti-pronoun was a thing. He always refers to himself as he, or she, even perhaps. But he takes on the persona of whoever he is talking about. and so he delves into these stories of an engineer in 1922 in Southwest Africa who is sent down there to trace an atmospheric disturbance called a spheric. And Mondagen, that's his name, Kurt Mondagen, uh, just he winds up in a decadent hothouse party, Foppel's Fasching. Foppel's the name of the character, Fasching is what the party is called. And there he encounters one of the V characters. Vera, I think, is the one he encounters. Vera? I think Vera. And also encounters a young girl that, 14, I think, 15, that he becomes his object of his lust. Also encounters Blissero, but not by name. Blissero is actually called Weissman here, but Weissman or Blissero will show up in Gravity's Rainbow in a notorious section. So Mondoggin just has horrible, horrible experiences down there in this hothouse. This hothouse becomes a breeding ground for decadence, for just ugh. There's one section where I don't know if he has this vision of or what, but he is on a horse transporting some black prisoners from one place to another during the uh, genocide in 1904 with von Troffa. And one of the prisoners or slaves, I'm not really sure about the distinction here, um, gets a cut in his foot, starts to complain. So they try to take him out of the chain. The person tasked to take him out of the chain slips and falls and gets stomped by that particular worker, slave, prisoner, and then they take that prisoner off the chain. The guy who was stomped abuses him and mutilates his genitals, and then they beat him to death and throw him in a ditch. And that's just terrible. That's just unbelievably terrible. But it is meant as a depiction of the horrific conditions under which South Africa and colonialism happened. Um, and there are other scenes similar to this that happen. Mondoggin, or maybe one of his surrogates, it's hard to say, take on a female slave as a concubine um, and keeps her locked up so that no one else can have her. One of his neighbors discovers her, goes in, does his thing, and invites everyone else. And she's basically, again, very much like Josephina, gang raped. And so the same exact thing happens in the street as happens in the hothouse. And that's part of what Pynchon is doing here. The left and the right, which is better? The top, the bottom, the elite, the preterite, the named people, the unnamed people, the heroes and the stars, or the also rans and the background characters. Well, you know, take your pick, but maybe in the end it doesn't really matter because the same shit happens everywhere. And maybe that's what's going on here is a deconstruction of the notion that something different happens anywhere. And but B is also, the future and the past. It's the moment when something things change. How did things get this way? And that becomes one of the questions of most Pynchon is when did it change? And there's no definitive answer because what is it? What is time? Time becomes an issue here too because not Stencil, travels back and forth in time all the time. Anyway, so this novel progresses to where they all wind up in Malta. Uh, Profane and Paola and Stencil wind up in Malta. They have a conversation with Fausto Magistral, which is Paola's dad, and they get some sense of closure, I suppose, because Paola uh, meets up with Paddy Hod, whose ship is in dock there, and decides to give their marriage another try. So she's going back to New York, and when he's demobbed in 8 months, they're going to get back together. And then uh, Stencil, she takes off, and Stencil gets a lead in, I don't know, Amsterdam or Stuttgart or somewhere, and he takes off, so he's gone. And then Vinny is left alone in Malta with nothing to do, and he starts to yo-yo again. Mestral takes care of him for a little while. He runs into a woman named Brenda, who has a whole bunch of Bermuda shorts. So, she's basically just normal. And he gets involved with her, and the book ends with him basically running off in the sunset. Except there's an epilogue where we find out what happened to his Sydney. He was basically caught up in a whirlpool outside of Malta. Yeah, there's lots of details in this book I've not gotten to. Um, Esther, her nose job, her involvement with the plastic surgeon, and her eventual need for an abortion that the whole sick crew raises $300 for and sends her to Cuba for. Uh, the entire idea of V as a coming apart person, a woman being replaced slowly by automatons, women being associated with automation and with, like I said, with a place, with the inanimate. Vinnie Profane's, complete and utter inability to deal with the inanimate. Um, you know, uh, uh, the death of a young, promising opera singer by having a pole that accidentally pierces through her vagina and kills her. She's supposed to be wearing a chastity belt, and she didn't for whatever reason. Just lots and lots and lots of things, most of them, disturbing or unhinged. And that's part of the point here is all of these things just thrown at you and thrown at you. And it's very intertextual as well. So I don't know if I've done this novel justice, but that's what we got for today. See you next time.